Do you know some honest and straightforward, maybe simple, but true and truth-telling disciples of Jesus and followers of God? I know I do, and I have two that I want to tell you about this morning, and they come to mind because of the disciples we've read about in the gospel reading today. Those disciples are that kind of interesting, Philip and Nathanael. Nathanael had some questions, but Jesus will say of Nathanael when they meet, "Here is a true Israelite. In him there's no deceit, no guile." And I think when Jesus tells him that, it catches him in his heart, and he professes faith in this one. I mean, how would he know that? And Jesus says, "This is an honest man." Well, in my life in the church, two strong disciples of Jesus and mentors to me when I was young are Mark and Bob. They were volunteer leaders of the middle school youth group when I was in church, so 11, 12, 13-year-olds, and they had sons exactly my age in the group, and they were volunteer leaders. And as 11-year-old boys, we were so excited. I mean, you just can be generally excited about life, but we were also so excited that our youth group got to meet in a house that was right near the church property. They bought a couple homes and they were using them as space. And so we would go into this home and there was nothing in there but couches. And I'd never been in a house that was not decorated with just couches. This was like 11-year-old boy heaven. Like, we're going to have a lot of fun in this space. And we would meet together and have fun in this open space. And then the leaders would settle us down and say, "Okay, now let's get serious. Let's talk together." And Mark and Bob would lead us through some teaching and some testimonies about why they followed Jesus. And I think of those guys because they're kind of like Nathanael types to me. They're truthful men. They were simple in their approach, but they were dedicated to the gospel. And there were aspects of the youth group I was in that were much more showy. We would put on dramas and plays for each other and for groups all over the city. We would enter into the wonder of story when we could. But then there were also these men who would sit with us and listen and pray and just share their devotion. It wasn't some amazing teaching from on high, though I like that kind of teaching sometimes. And it wasn't some showy magic trick in youth group, although I could like some showy magic tricks too. It was just heartfelt explanation. It was their presence. It was leading by example and telling it plainly to us. And it was a really formative time. And I think back and I'm thankful for those kinds of followers of Jesus. They seem like Nathanael to me. And do you know some followers like that? I hope you do. The gospel reading paints the picture of Jesus finding these disciples. Jesus decided to go to Galilee. Jesus is seeking people out, making the moves, especially Philip, for whom it says, Jesus found him. And then Philip tells Nathanael about the wonder of it, and Jesus sees Nathanael under the tree. When they meet, Jesus tells him about it. This Sunday, these stories find us. These are our readings here on the second Sunday after Epiphany. And I hope you heard it. We heard Philip tell Nathanael, "We've found the one Moses and the prophets are waiting for." Reminds me of Christmas, where I said, God is coming home to the world. And now they're spreading the message. Like, Advent is over, Christmas has happened, it's Epiphany now. Come and see, we found the one. In our translation of the Greek word for Epiphany, one of the phrases that comes out of it is to be showing forth. Jesus is now showing forth his God self in these encounters with the disciples. And for 2 weeks in our lectionary, this Sunday and next Sunday, we will hear the stories of Jesus calling disciples to follow as the presence of the Son of God in the world is shown forth to them. And so because we're going to get a double dip of the stories over these 2 weeks, today I want to call us to strongly sense how it's something about how Jesus, as God, knows us, like he knew Nathanael. It's that being known by our Creator that is essential to our response to the call, follow, come and see. We go because we're known. I think that's what Nathanael experiences. When Jesus sees him approaching and says, "Here is someone without deceit," Nathanael says, "Where did you get to know me?" Jesus answers, "I saw you under the fig tree." And all of this is now enough now for Nathanael to confess. He says, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Where did you get to know me?" I wondered with the Tuesday Bible study group this week, we wondered what could happen in between these lines. Is there more to the story that Nathanael comes to his epiphany? Is there anything more? And we also wondered, does Nathanael, it calls him and names him a true Israelite. So surely he knows some key psalms and some memorable psalmic texts, like Psalm 139, the one assigned for our reading today. Of course, he knows this prayer to God. And what might it mean if he knows it? "You have searched me and known me. You are familiar with all my ways. You've found me. You see, and you see with the Creator's love, O God." There was some connection, there must have been, for Nathanael. And the depth of feeling that he encounters that wells up in him, that causes him to name Jesus as the Messiah, is it that sense of, in Jesus' presence, he feels, "I am known by this one"? Is the presence of this one the epiphany that causes Nathanael to realize, if I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. God, you are everywhere. Your goodness shows forth. And in all these places, you've also known me. You've knit me together. So I was told to come and see. I see the Son of God. And I'm free to be myself in front of the one who made me. And I'm free to know that God's all-encompassing love propels me to further freedom and joy. Somehow, Nathanael has that experience with Jesus because he speaks and says, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God." This is why in our Epiphany season and in our liturgy of confession, our confession is echoing Psalm 139. If you hadn't noticed it before, this is the Sunday to notice it. The words come from this psalm, that we might wake up to this truth in our confession too. God knows us. God is holding us together, and God's strong love is making us free. And don't we need that kind of message in our lives today? I know I do. To be reminded in isolation and in times of being careful, when I'm in line at the grocery store in my mask and it's quiet and it's still awkward for me, I need a reminder that in all my places and my striving for safety and in some feelings of loneliness, that God knows me, knows my place, and if I were up in the heavens, he'd be there. If I were in the depths, God would be there. That in all our trying days, we're still called to trust that God knows us and puts us together, that we're not hidden from God. Even in our days, God is with us. And that knowing and searching and calling when we do that with God, it's always about our true selves. This is kind of how hospice chaplains think, and I think some counselors. When we talk together, there's always the question behind wondering, how can I help someone share their true self? How could they express who they truly are and not feel like they have to be something different with me? And it's for all of us. There are so many defenses and ideas we build up about ourselves. But the psalm cuts right through that. God, you know the real me. And Epiphany shines right through that. Light and showing forth comes to the real me. And it may sometimes be threatening or scary to think that way, but it's the thing of confession too. I'm not losing myself. I am just letting go of the hardened defenses and the facades that I've put up to the world. Myself is in there, even in all this change and even in hard times. And God the Maker is there. The scriptures say, trust your Creator. Be the creature you were made to be. So I propose this morning that embracing Psalm 139, where God knows us and fashions the world in love, well, it is like how perfect love casts out all fear. It means that knowing that and claiming it sets us free to be disciples and followers of the way, to respond to God's call and take the next step with Jesus. In the idea of taking steps, I didn't want this morning to just mention youth group leaders from 30 years ago. I wanted to mention disciples in the here and now. And so I asked a couple members of Faith Lutheran Church some questions to respond to that I could share their testimony with you. And the questions were, what does it mean to you to be known by God? How does that bear fruit in your life? Or what does it feel like or mean? And the other question is, how do you respond to God's call? So Sonia, dressed back, shared with me, and here's something she said. There have been times in my life that things happened that I felt God's presence with me, guiding me and helping me deal with what was happening. He knew what I was going through, and he calmed me when I was scared and gave me peace when I was anxious. Accidents, illness, death, God was with me, giving me strength and peace. Births, celebrations, God was with me, sharing my joy. I call on him often because he's always been there for me when I needed him, wrapping me in his arms and consoling me, wiping away tears and helping to see the sunshine for another day. I have seen his hand visibly take away sickness and heard his calling to me take on something more than I was used to. I may have pondered it a bit, but I never said no. God knows me better than I know myself, and his plans are bigger than mine. God knows us and what we are capable of, and asks us to share his love and grace. Each time I said yes, I learned more about myself, and my faith continues to grow. And he makes me aware of his presence in the little things. He knows where my keys or phone are when I can't find them, and waits for me to ask, and then he helps me focus and find them. Thank you, Sonia. Come and follow Christ. And I asked Sarah to share. Can I read your response? Yeah. Sarah wrote, I've felt known by God in various ways in my life, occasionally being caught off guard by an experience of grace where I perhaps feel a sense of kinship with the mountains that surround our home, or when I feel soothed in prayer, when I bring my fears and worries to God. Just recently, I have begun to tell God about my worries in prayer. I've found these frank admissions of how I'm feeling are met with an increased sense of calm. I can bring my worries, honestly name them, and they're lifted from my heart. sometimes just a little. But simply being honest and unfancy in prayer brings my hidden self into the light. I experience God's calling for me in a myriad of small ways, good ideas that pop into my head, songs on the radio, a name that keeps popping up, or a curiosity that won't go away. These are the small ways. I trust the sense of rightness about ideas or decisions, like coming to Faith Lutheran for the first time and it just feeling right. It wasn't a decision I made so much as it was a fit that I felt, and I trusted it was simply my job to continue showing up. God had the rest and continues to have the rest. It feels like following the breadcrumbs of being in alignment with what is right and good. Thank you, Sarah. Come and follow Christ. Friends, these are testimonies of the ways, and we join yours, the ways we are following God in our days and in these times and in this year. The call, even in our wider church, is God's work, our hands. And today, as we reflect on God's call in our lives, may God's Spirit draw so close to you, reminding you, as it does the psalmist, as it does Nathaniel, O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You know me under the fig tree. You know me on Zoom. You know me under the mask. You know me in times of distance and safety. You know my longings and my prayers. And how vast is the love that inspires all our trust now. May it be so. Amen.